I was basically born in Cape Town, South Africa, and I spent the first part of my life there until I was about 13 years of age. And I remember the days when my mother used to cry because she didn't know how she was going to feed her 4 children. I'm one of 4 children, and we grew up extremely poor. And it wasn't for lack of effort on my dad's part. He worked terribly long hours, except he worked in a job that didn't pay him very well, and his biggest problem was that he wasn't a white person at the time. So I'm very privileged to be living in Australia, and I was lucky enough that my family immigrated to Australia when I was 13, and I went to school and worked very, very hard, because one of the things that I vouched to do was to never experience poverty like I did as I was growing up. And the thing that got me excited was the prospect of pursuing a great career, and I ended up pursuing a career in the IT industry. So I was in the computer field, and in my last job I was actually with Hewlett-Packard. But that wasn't all good either, because I found that even though I worked very, very hard and went to uni and all that sort of stuff, when I started to get promoted, which seemed to be fun at the time, but very soon I realised that I was working for the company, and they seemed to be getting more out of me than for their own purposes than me personally. And I found myself doing enormous hours and working 70 to 80-hour weeks. People thought I had the luxury of travelling everywhere, but that was normally on my time. So I'd travel to another place on the weekend so I could be there on Monday morning to work. And I started to realise that it wasn't fulfilling me. And then I started to think about my situation and thought, if I've worked this hard to get here, what awaits me? All I can imagine is to continue to do the same thing. And so it was about that time that I started to take a look at my boss. And the reason why I took a look at my boss is because I figured that if I was to continue what I was doing, then the only thing I could hope for was to get his job. So, I took a look at him, and his name was Greg, and he was in his 50s at the time. He'd had 3 failed marriages. He was in a relationship, a permanent relationship, but he didn't get to see his 4-year-old son very often either. So I started to wonder if I was making the right decision. And so it was about then I had a major awakening, because the path that I was on was not going to give me any fulfillment. Sure, I was well paid as far as a job goes, nothing like what I get paid now, but at the time, a lot of people would have thought that I was being silly when I decided to look elsewhere. And what I decided to do was to study everything that I could on the subject of trading and investing in financial markets. And I focused specifically on the share market to start with, and as I got results there, I got into real estate as well. Now, a funny thing happened to me. A number of years after I started to achieve some great results in it, I actually was able to walk away from my job. And at the time, I was being paid about $200,000 a year in my full-time job. And my friends thought I was absolutely nuts for walking away from that job. But the thing that they didn't realise is that by trading financial markets only 2 to 6 hours a week, I was actually able to match that income or get very, very close to it. And so it no longer made sense for me to work in the corporate life, because I was able to follow a different strategy. And I figured that if I didn't have my job, I could probably do more of that stuff. So I decided to walk away from full-time work as it was, and that was back in early 2000 or so.
Since I've been with Julian and his team, one of my accounts, I think in that account, cash-wise, it wasn't much, a couple of thousand to start with. Yeah. So that particular portfolio has done well. Yeah. And we've traded, and probably within the 6 to 9 months. The other day it was trading at we had about 118,000 in it. We did one trade with the boys, and we bought $3,000 worth of puts. The market fell away, and when they traded them, we made $23,000 on it.
Okay, I don't normally come to these sorts of things, and every time I do it's with trepidation, and they normally don't live up to expectations. But this certainly exceeded all expectations, well presented, well catered for, and I can highly recommend it.
Well, I've just had the most amazing weekend. I've learnt so much about CFD trading and share trading, things I never knew before. I've always been with managed funds, and advisors have looked after me and lost most of my money. So now at least I can learn how to make it all back. Magnificent course. Jules is a brilliant presenter, keeps you interested and laughing all the time. Recommend it to anyone.
This has been a really enlightening experience. I've never done any type of share trading before. To me, it's as technical as computer parts and not understanding how they all work. So to have someone really break that down for you, talk in layman's terms, and give you a really polished presentation that makes sense, it's really fulfilling. If there's anything I can advise to any of my friends now is go get yourself educated, educate yourself about share trading, and I'd highly recommend you let Jules do that, because certainly I feel confident now in getting into the market and trading away. So thanks again, Jules.
I'm Philip. I come from Toowoomba. I recently retired farmer and looking at going into investment, living with investments now. I had a few cash flow strategies going that weren't working. I'd been to previous workshops. They didn't seem to be current in the, not for me, strategies for what the market is doing at the moment. Dual Corp came to Toowoomba 2 years ago, and I went along because I'm always trying to learn new stuff, especially in regards to shares, trading. And I got introduced to the Dual Corp and all their wealth strategies. So then I joined up for your mentorship program, and since then I've our business, which I suppose it has become now, our investment has turned into an investment business. We're now, what I've been chasing, we've now got cash flow back in the business, which then has let us step out to buy more investments again, which then creates another problem. We need more cash flow again. And yes, so far it's working really well. Hitting all the goals and rewriting new goals. It's I suppose it's been excellent so far. It's taken me exactly where I wanted to go. And before Jules, I was swimming in the dark, really, looking back, just trying to trade shares without derivatives. Seemed a long haul, and just waiting for the time factor of investments, the share market to recover and appreciating value. And that hasn't really happened in the last 3 or 4 years. But we still now have the ability to take money out of the market, and we can keep on doing what we want to do. Yeah, the first 6 months we just went gangbusters. And I think we can easily, double, triple where we are now. Yeah, it's exact figures. We were depends on the size of your portfolio, I suppose. But we were pulling, probably averaging about 30,000 a month, but that's dropped back to about 12 now, so it's a big difference. Still a lot of money, but it's a big difference, in your projections of where you want to go. But I have full faith. It's just a time thing now, and I don't think we're too far away from really start, hit gangbusters. Month would have been September last year. I think we took about, and this is where the averages is a funny thing, we took $75,000 out of the market for that month. Our worst month's probably about 5, so you get the average there somewhere, but no month has been a negative month, put it that way, even in the current situation, which is good. It's I just like more of the top end ones. I like the way Jules does it. You can go to a lot of, I usually looking for knowledge all the time, and I like Jules' approach to it in that it makes it fun, as well as learning. A lot of them can get fairly boring, I suppose the word is, but his content and the way he changes, the workshop just changes at a whim, which is good, keeps everyone interested. But I would recommend anyone to learn more, because just my experience in my former life, business, you can't learn everything by yourself. You have to pay somebody for knowledge, and so it's a real shortcut to where you want to go. Somebody that's already been there and willing to share their experiences with you, and just follow what they do.
My first official seminar was to Uncle Mario in his lounge room, to 10 people that we all knew, and of course they told other people about it, and then I'd go over there and Trey and I would present to them, etc. But unfortunately, one day we ran out of friends and family, and we had this really exciting thing that we were doing. And then a good friend of mine actually invited me to a business course where I learned how to actually do some advertising and all that sort of thing. And so the same ad that you probably responded to in the paper is the same ad we've been using for the last, since 2002. So, you know, it tends to get people here, and it's fine. The unfortunate thing about advertising is that you really have to make yourself out to be something that maybe might appear not so real. And the thing that I hope you get most out of this this program is that we're actually extremely down-to-earth people. And the thing is, if I don't have the Ferrari in the photo, people don't come to the seminar. But once they're here, I think striving to have a Ferrari is probably the most shallow thing you could ever strive for. But for some reason, that's what gets the people here. So my job is to get you thinking that it's pie in the sky stuff, and then make it real for you in something that's a lot more wholesome and special. So I'll see how I go with that today. But I bet you don't know anyone who lives on the street. I'd be very surprised if you know anyone who lives on the street. Yet you go overseas and you see, you know, not dozens of people, but thousands of people who are hungry. They don't even have basic things like security. So why I share that with you is because I grew up in a very struggled upbringing, and I don't think I'm a particularly intelligent person. I don't think there's anything special about me. And the whole point being that if we live in an environment and a society like we do, and I was able to make a success of it, then it means absolutely anybody here can. And all you have to do is just pay attention to what I'm going to share with you today. So I'm very excited to be here because I know that Freya and I have had the privilege of massively changing people's lives. And yes, we do focus on it from the perspective of helping you make money, but ultimately what we want to do is help nurture your environment so that you can actually be a contributor to the planet.